Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. If you go by the statement of the Finance Minister in a budget speech, the proposed Vivaad se Vishwas income tax dispute resolution scheme of the government is meant to tackle the huge crisis of burgeoning a huge pile up of income tax cases in dispute at various appellate forums. That is the declared purpose of the government. But we think that this scheme is a desperate move by the government in order to ramp up tax collections and in order to plug the ever increasing fiscal deficit. The earlier estimate of the PMO was that under this scheme, a number of appeals will get resolved such that about 60,000 crores of additional tax collections will accrue in this financial year. And recent reports say that the PMO thinks that the amount that would be gathered additionally under this particular scheme by resolution of disputes is going to be about 2 lakh crores. The reality is that the country is infested with tax disputes at various forums, right from the CIT appeals up to the Supreme Court. About 4.85 lakh cases are involving these kind of disputes, and the amount involved is about 9.32 lakh crores, which is almost 1 year of income tax collection in the country. The government seeks to resolve it. But the reality is that the government faces a situation where the economy is slowing down and tax collections are not up to the mark. And thus, this scheme comes as a measure where a frantic government hopes to collect revenues by giving incentives to the taxpayers to not pursue their appeals and settle their cases. Broadly, under this scheme, if you are in dispute, you are entitled to settle your appeal by just paying the tax amount, and the government will not take any further penal interest, compounding interest, and it will not levy penalty, it will not start prosecution proceedings. If you have a penalty case going on, the government says under the scheme, just pay 25% of the penalty amount involved and you can resolve the case. No further action will be taken. The dispute will be closed. To us, this entire scheme looks like what we would call an end of season sale in a mall. Why do we say that? Look at the way the government is going about it. The scheme has not yet been finalized by the parliament, and we are already seeing a huge promotion going on by the government. Calls are being made to taxpayers. Advertisements have already started coming in newspapers. Flyers and notices are going to taxpayers where there are disputes. And taxpayers are being pursued in various ways, asking them to settle their appeals under this particular scheme. So, like a sale, huge promotions going on. To make the entire scheme attractive like a scale, it's an incentive-based scheme where the incentive is certainly attractive. Pay only tax, settle your dispute, no interest, no penalty, no prosecution. Or if it is penalty, pay only 25% of the penalty amount and close the case. And if it is the income tax department which has filed an appeal, then pay only 50% of the tax. So like a sale, there are huge discounts in the pipeline for all those who want to settle their income tax appeals. And like in a sale, the older stock gets the maximum discount. So is the case here. The older the appeal, the more attractive is this particular scheme, because the older the appeal, there is a much higher levy of penal interest and penalty at times, and that would be entirely waived. So like old stock and old appeal under this particular scheme if settled is certainly very attractive. Like any sale, this particular scheme involves cash down. The taxpayer who settles his dispute is required to make payment of the tax amount within 15 days of receiving the acceptance of his application by the department. Thus, like a sale, cash down, no credit, no timeline for payment, paid within 15 days. And of course, no exchange and no refund policy. The case gets closed, no further action to be taken. Like in case of any sale, targets have been set. All assessing officers and authorities have been given targets to meet. They have been asked to persuade the assessees, asking them to settle their tax disputes to the maximum possible under the scheme. And in order to see that they do that, it has already been stated that their current year's performance and appraisal is going to be based on how successful have they been in persuading their assessees to settle these cases. Thus, their promotions, performance and postings are going to be determined by how successful the tax officers were in persuading their taxpayers to avail of the scheme. And to make it attractive, there's going to be an immediate approval. As soon as you file your application seeking it, if you are eligible, the internal instructions are that the officer must approve the application within 24 hours. That makes it a very attractive sale. And then, like any sale, in order to make it successful, targets are being identified. And the softest target for the government, of course, is PSUs and PSBs are being asked to settle their tax disputes under the scheme. We all know organizations like ONGC, organizations like State Bank of India, the public sector banks, GAIL, Nuclear Power Corporation, all of them have got huge tax disputes going on. Even state organizations like MSEB, MIDC, etc. again have huge tax disputes. And the government has been telling them, avail of the scheme, settle your disputes. For example, one report says that LIC has got tax disputes to the tune of 30,000 crores. And if LIC is forced to settle these, of course, the scheme is going to be a success. So soft targets have been identified. One report says that most of the PSUs, PSBs and organizations like LIC are not of the opinion that this scheme should be availed of. They would want to contest their claims. But it seems that the government is pressurizing them, of course, to make the end of season sale a grand success. This particular scheme is soon going to meet the approval of the Parliament, and it is time to ask, what will be the outcome of the scheme? Will it be a success? Will it be a grand success? Or will it be a failure? In our opinion, the targets that have been set by the government under this scheme are huge. They are extremely ambitious. The PMO expects to collect 2 lakh crores by way of tax because taxpayers it expects will rush in and take advantage of the scheme. We think that is unlikely. The reality is that the success rate of Income Tax Department in appeals at various forums, right from the CIT appeals up to the Supreme Court, is very poor. The department manages to win a minuscule fraction of the appeals that are pursued against it and by it. And thus, it is misplaced to think that taxpayers will rush in to settle their disputes availing of the scheme. So, the targets are extremely ambitious. And because the targets are ambitious and these targets have been forced down upon the assessing officers, saying that their promotion, performance and posting is going to be determined by how successful they are in meeting their targets, there's bound to be harassment and coercion from the department asking taxpayers to settle their disputes under the scheme. Of course, as we said, PSUs and PSBs are going to be the softest targets, but we still think that they might not be completely bullied by the government because in a number of cases, organizations like State Bank, LIC, ONGC, etc. are fighting disputes where the chances of success are extremely bright, and the management of these organizations is bound to resist that their disputes must be settled under the scheme. The other reason we think that there is going to be a hindrance in the success of the scheme is a short timeline. The scheme ends, if you want the best benefits under the scheme ends on 31st March 2020. Taxpayers are expected to pay their taxes by then. That's a time limit of just about 20 days. At a time when the economy is floundering, businesses are not doing good, liquidity is scarce, how are taxpayers going to be able to arrange the money in order to make payment by 31st March? We think an extension of that date is extremely inevitable. We have seen that in the past also. Whenever the government came up with an ambitious and short deadline, it was forced to extend it. And we think that it is going to be extended in this case too. So, how will be the outcome? What will be the outcome of this end of season sale? We think it will be a moderate one. It is not going to be a grand success. According to us, if the government is able to collect even 75,000 to a lakh of crores under the scheme, particularly by bullying PSUs and PSBs, it would be a moderate success. And that we think is a likely outcome of this particular grand sale which has been announced by the government. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.